Hello there. Welcome to Just the Discs. We talk about Blu-rays here. My name's Brian. And today we're talking about a couple of my favorite releases from Kino for the month of November. One is a 4K, one is a set. I will start with the 4K. And it is one of my favorite movies, actually, of all time. It is Don Siegel's 1979 film of Escape from Alcatraz, starring Clint Eastwood in the main role as Frank Morris. He and a couple of the Anglin brothers, these are based on real people and a real escape attempt, or I guess successful escape, that took place in the early 1960s or mid-1960s, I believe. And this film is fantastic. It is one that I have been a fan of for a long time, and that when I worked in video stores was a regular part of my staff pick sections. Like a lot of movies you'd swap in and out, sort of based on new things you'd see or just wanting to have different stuff in there, but Escape from Alcatraz for me was a movie that was a mainstay of my staff picks. Like I always wanted it in there because I've always loved it. I think it's just a really well-made and sort of classically made prison movie from a director in Don Siegel who had success with Clint Eastwood a few times, but previously in Coogan's Bluff and then in Dirty Harry, which was their biggest hit. And so this was something of a something to prove movie for Don Siegel in a way. He was returning to a collaboration with Clint Eastwood, who had blown up, ever since his appearances in the Leone films in the, mid to late 60s. And then, as I said, through his films with Siegel, he'd made a lot of hits, including just previous to this, he had made, I believe, Every Which Way But Loose, which is one of his biggest hits. And to go from that film, which is, raucous comedy, action movie, to a much more mannered prison drama, more or less, was an interesting choice. But obviously one that Eastwood trusted Siegel with the material, and they both worked really well together, obviously, and this came out as a great movie. And as I said, based on a true story, which is obviously messed with a little bit, but I don't know. They shot on Alcatraz, which I think adds to the authenticity and to the classic feeling nature of the film. And Siegel had said that he shot for black and white because he pictured all prison films should be shot in black and white, which of course his previous prison film, Riot in Cell Block 11, which is available on the Criterion Collection, was a big one for him in one of his early films. And so he, again, had something to prove in a guy who'd already made a prison movie and who was coming back to work with Clint Eastwood again. But I love this movie. It's just a story about a very intelligent man who figures out a way to escape the inescapable. And there's a great villain set up here. We have a warden played by Patrick McGoohan, who was a popular character actor who had become known for his television shows in the UK, Secret Agent, and then The Prisoner. And this is a great sort of turnabout on The Prisoner. If you haven't seen that show, it's a wonderful cult television show where he plays a secret agent who's imprisoned on a sort of an island type place, and he can't escape, and there is sort of a prison warden type there that he's always sort of matching wits with, and in this case he sort of is now playing that type of character, and I think it's a fun flip, if you will, but not essential that you've seen that show to enjoy this movie. I just think he's a really good villain in this, really good warden character that's always sort of trying to stay one step ahead of these guys, and it's great how things progress. We see the Frank Morris character arrive at Alcatraz in one of the great opening sequences of any film of the 70s. It's almost a wordless opening as he's brought aboard a ferry and then brought into the actual prison, examined like an animal, showered off, and walked naked through the cell block to his solitary cell. And that's the other thing that's neat about this movie and Alcatraz in general, is that it was a prison where all the inmates had to have cells just to themselves. So in other prison movies and prisons, you would sometimes see, certain cells full of guys, making a plan together and such. And this movie doesn't afford them the same opportunities in that way. They have to figure out ways to communicate with each other through the walls, through, sound, and, they have to figure out this plan. But there's something about that solitary cell that makes it feel different from other prison movies. And I won't go into the specifics of the escape that they figure out, but obviously it's based on real stuff, and it would have taken a really intelligent mind to put all those pieces together. So I love to watch it unfold, and there's a lot of great actors in here, and Roberts Blossom and Fred Ward and others. And like I said, it just plays out in this really awesome way. It has a very haunting last shot, which I've come to find out was, well, not the last shot, but maybe the last segment was rejiggered kind of a little bit by Clint Eastwood at the end. I guess, according to the commentary, which is really nice, which is a commentary track we get from film historians Steve Mitchell and Nathaniel Thompson, two guys very good together. We also get an interview with screenwriter Richard Tuggle, very interesting, and an interview with actor Larry Hankin. So we get some nice features on this disc as well. And you also get a Blu-ray in here as well as the 4K. But apparently Don Siegel was late making his next movie. He had to leave before post-production was finished, and so Eastwood oversaw the final mix and then decided that there were some things they could do with the ending, which I'll leave for you to sort of figure out with the commentary. I do recommend listening to the commentary and seeing I think the improvements that Eastwood made to the ending, where it was going to end and where it ends now, I think were a little different, and I like how it ends. But I love this movie, as I said, written by Richard Tuggle. As I said, there's a writer interview here. You can hear him talk about his experiences, but there's a great story about how he found the book, which apparently deals with multiple escapes, not just this one, and was able to talk the author into getting the rights and writing the script, and was able to sort of con Don Siegel's agent into getting the script to him. That's a little story you hear in the commentary too. Really interesting stuff. Also interesting to note that Paramount had to spend maybe something like $500,000 to clean up Alcatraz, as it was in disrepair, and there was graffiti and some other things that had to be dealt with, but of course in water-soluble paint so that it could be left as it was when they were done. But again, great commentary, lots of interesting tidbits in there, well worth your time, and a good-looking transfer. Nice, 185, Paramount frame, and it looks very good. The contrast is nice, and the color is nice, although it is sparse. As I said, Siegel and his DP, Bruce Surtees, I believe, were very much into shooting this like a black and white movie, so there's a lot of high contrast, pools of light, things like that. But it does look better, and the detail is better than the previous Blu-ray that I have. And I've bought this multiple times because I love this movie. But very excited to see this on Blu-ray, so it is definitely one of my favorite releases for November. And then secondly, we have, continuing their wonderful series, Kino is doing Night Gallery Season 3, its final season. And this includes a lot of episodes that I'm going to go through here. Actually, there's so many. The great things about these sets is that there's so many commentary tracks, and they also have this ongoing documentary series called The Syndication Conundrum, and it's about 55 minutes, the third part, which you get on this disc. This is only a 2-disc set, but you get your nice slipcase. We get our 2 discs. And then we get an episode listing, as you can see there. But let me go through all the features that you get, because that will also give you an indication of the episodes you're getting in case you're looking for specific episodes. But I should note that this is available for the first time in HD from 2K scans of the inner positives for this new set, which again closes out the 3 seasons. I'll go into the specifics of the seasons in a second here, but let me talk to you about the commentary. So the first episode you get in the first disc, well, actually, I can't say, I think they all have commentaries, and some have multiple commentaries, but you get one called The Return of the Sorcerer. That has a commentary by novelist and critic Kim Newman and writer and editor Stephen Jones. I love them as a duo. Great commentary from them. Also on that episode, an audio commentary by Night Gallery authors and historians Jim Benson and Scott Skelton. Then on The Girl with Hungry Eyes, we have 2 commentaries. We have a commentary track by Night Gallery and author and historian Scott Skelton, and then another one by author and historian David J. Scow. Then on Rare Objects, we have, it looks like 2 commentaries for that as well. The first one is a really interesting amalgamation with lots of little interview inserts. So Rare Objects has a commentary by author historian Jim Benson featuring Rod Serling, Guillermo del Toro, Mickey Rooney, who stars in the episode, Raymond Massey, who also stars in the episode, Janos Wark, who directed it, and Tom Wright. So you get, I think, Benson giving an overview of this whole episode and interjecting these little interview clips, which are really neat to hear, especially the Serling stuff. Also on this episode, Rare Objects has a commentary by film historian Craig Beam. Then you have an episode called Spectre in Tap Shoes, and that has a commentary by film historian, author Amanda Reyes. I'm a big fan of her work. Then you have You Can Come Up Now, Mrs. Millican / Smile Please, and that episode by Night Gallery author historian Jim Benson featuring Ozzie Nelson, Lindsay Wagner, Michael Lerner, Roger Davis, John Badham, and Tom Wright. Again, similar kind of format, interjecting little clips of interviews. Also on that episode, a commentary by novelist critic Tim Lucas, which I always adore his tracks, and he's done a great deal of these tracks on the previous 2 sets. Audio commentary on The Other Way Out by Night Gallery author and historian Scott Skelton. Also Scott Skelton on Fright Night, the next episode, and another Fright Night commentary by Amanda Reyes as well. So multiple commentaries. I love these sets. There's just so much stuff here. Finnegan's Flight. This has an audio commentary by, again, Jim Benson featuring interview bites from Rod Serling, Guillermo del Toro, Burgess Meredith, Cameron Mitchell, Leonard Engelman, Jenny Sullivan, and Tom Wright. And then another commentary on Finnegan's Flight by television music historian Dr. Reba Wisner. So that's disc 1 in terms of your extra features. And then in terms of disc 2, on the episode She'll Be Company for You, author historian Amanda Reyes does a commentary. On that episode as well, you get a commentary from film historian Craig Beam. Audio commentary on The Ring with Red Velvet Ropes by Night Gallery author historian Jim Benson, featuring, again, clips Rod Serling, Joan Van Ark, Gary Lockwood, Janos Wark, Leonard Engelman, and Tom Wright. Audio commentary also on Ring with the Red Velvet Ropes by television music historian Dr. Reba Wisner. Audio commentary for Something in the Woodwork by Night Gallery author historian Scott Skelton. Audio commentary also on that episode by Kim Newman and Stephen Jones. Audio commentary on Death on a Barge by Scott Skelton and also by Tim Lucas. 2 tracks on that one. For the episode Whisper, you get Jim Benson, again, with clips from Guillermo del Toro, Sally Field, Dean Stockwell, Janos Wark, David Raphael, Gerald Perry, Finnerman, Burt Astor, and Tom Wright. And then audio commentary for Doll of Death by Kim Newman and Stephen Jones. Audio commentary for Hatred Unto Death and How to Cure the Common Vampire by screenwriter Gary Gurani. And Syndication Conundrum Part 3, the featurette, is 55 minutes, and that's hosted by film historian Craig Beam. And that goes into the troubles that the series ran into in the 3rd season, which had to do with it, I mean, a lot of things, but getting cut down to 30 minutes an episode, and then how that further would affect its syndication, wherein, the network NBC ultimately they need 30-minute episodes for syndication. So these episodes were okay, although it did hamper the storytelling a little bit in terms of having to do that, on top of which they wanted to make the show more like, say, Mannix. So certain kinds of shows were rejected outright for more thrilling, if you will, episodes. And, so on top of that, you have them canceling the show mid-season and then sort of limping it to the end, postponing shows and finally getting to the end and having, ironically, the last show of the season that they had done get cracking into the Nielsen top 10 for the first time since the original telepilot movie had aired on television. That was the first time that had happened. So weirdly, just such a checkered history for this show ultimately. But talking about how they had to cut the shows down for syndication in the previous 2 seasons, had hour-long episodes and different varying lengths of stories within those episodes, and how that was affected in some cases really ruined a couple of the greater episodes of the show in terms of the syndication. But it is a fascinating story nonetheless to hear about what they did to the show. I've talked about this in previous rounds dealing with this documentary and this show. It's just sort of a fascinating history for a troubled show that I think, despite all that, ends up still being one of the great television shows in the 1970s, and great work of Serling's. I think you can put alongside The Twilight Zone, if not quite on that level, pretty close. And to see them in nice HD versions with all these commentary tracks, it's truly a lovely tribute to the show. And so I'm very excited that we have now all 3 seasons available from Kino on Blu-ray. So anyway, Escape from Alcatraz on 4K, Night Gallery Season 3, 2 that I highly, highly recommend from Kino, released in November. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.